Welcome to Australia's Crown Melbourne, where the world's top poker players have gathered to play in the Southern Hemisphere's premier poker tournament. FullTiltPoker.net presents the Aussie Millions. Last week at our exclusive cash game, the chips were flying at a table loaded with star power. Patrick Antonius forced the action, caught some cards, and raked in nearly $200,000.
You can't win if you don't gamble.
And a familiar face couldn't resist the game.
Am I the best cash game player?
He's raising another 18,000 with 6 high.
You are very good, man.
I get the job done.
He loves to play big pots. I would say he's a very tough opponent.
And when these two get together, monster pots seem to follow.
We end up clashing a lot in a lot of big hands because it's hard for either one of us to fold against the other.
I hate to lose pots. It's going to be very exciting today.
Tonight, poker's biggest names continue to mix it up with over $1 million on the table. FullTiltPoker.net presents the Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. We come to you from Australia's beautiful Crown Melbourne, the home of the 2008 Aussie Millions. Tonight's action's about to get underway. I'm Barry Tompkins alongside the professor of poker, Howard Lederer. Howard, let's meet the players.
Well, in Seat 1, we have Patrick Antonius, the Finnish phenom, one of the best young players in the world, and our big winner last week.
In Seat 2, the man who many consider to be the best poker player in the world right now, Phil Ivey.
And at C3, we have Masa Kagawa, an amateur from Japan. He's already survived one scare. He lost his first buy-in, but doubled up late last week.
Tony G, the Australian, is in Seat 4. He won the Euro Poker Championship in 2005.
And you've got Chris Ferguson, along with those 5 bracelets. He won the 2008 National Heads Up Championship.
Gus Hansen is our returning champion from last year's Aussie Millions main event.
And John Jawanda, he's a 3-time WSOP bracelet winner and one of the best all-around players in the world.
And finally, in seat number 8, Eliel Ezra, a millionaire Vegas businessman who plays in many of the world's biggest games. Let's take a look at the standings. Patrick Antonius sits atop the field right now with a gain of just under 185,000 Australian dollars. And maybe Ezra was looking depressed because he's lost nearly $130,000 of his own money in this high-stakes cash game.
Well, Barry, the cards are in the air. We've got Jawanda straddling. That means he's doubled the big blind to 16, but he is live to raise.
Eliel Ezra going to call.
Okay.
Ivy folds. The action folding around to Tony G now.
Tony G calling with an ace-jack. We saw him willing to limp last week with just about any 2 cards.
Ferguson throws it away. Now Gus Hansen. An 8-4 from the big blind. He'll call for 800 more.
Action continuing much like last week. People willing to limp in with a lot of hands. In this deep stack format, if you catch the right flop, you might really get paid off.
4 players to the flop. Ace 10-3 on the flop. 2 hearts.
Big flop for Tony G. Top pair with a jack kicker, but Eliel Ezra's flopped a flush draw and leads out.
Makes it $4,000 to go on. And Tony G going to raise to $14,000.
Where he's going to take his stand. He knows that he may not have the best hand, but he wants to find out where he's at. Eliel Ezra just calls. Tony G with the best hand so far.
On the turn, a queen of clubs, no help. Ezra checks, and Tony G makes it $25,000.
Well, Tony G keeping the pressure on. He's going to force Ellie to really pay to try and hit that flush draw. But I don't think Ellie's in a mood to really start laying down here. He's already down over $128,000 going into this hand. He's probably not getting the right price to call. No, he does fold. Nice laydown, showing some patience here, even though he's down.
So Tony G will win $35,600 in that pot, and Ezra gonna go walkabout, as they say here in Australia.
Well, Ellie making a great choice to blow off some steam away from the table instead of at the table.
The rules: the game is no limit Texas Hold'em. Players can buy in for any amount and come and go as they please. And each chip representing an actual Australian dollar amount. That's currently about 90 cents to the U.S. dollar. The chip values ranging from 100 to 25,000. That's that white tile worth 25,000 Australian dollars.
Patrick Antonius already collecting quite a few of those.
Are we waiting for Ellie?
He might have gone for a big walk.
It looks like both Ellie and Masa Kagawa have left the table, so we're going to be playing this hand six-handed.
Remember, you don't have to play when you're playing cash game. In a tournament, these players will be getting dealt in and blinded out.
Patrick Antonius suited 10-9. And he's going to raise it to 2,500.
One of the few hands so far where someone hasn't straddled.
Tony G going to call this after Phil Ivey folded. Chris Ferguson folds. So does Hansen.
Well, pretty strong drawing hand so far.
So Jawanda will call. Three players to the flop. And here is the flop. Ace, Queen, 10 of diamonds.
Wow. I've only had 2 royal flushes in my career, Barry. This is a very rare hand. Obviously, Tony G with the nuts and no possible way of losing this hand unless he should somehow misread his hand and fold.
You had a big look like you're going to bet him.
And it's been checked around to Patrick. And he checks his bottom pair.
I check.
And so does Tony.
Well, of course, he's going to give his opponents a chance to maybe catch up a little.
And he catches a 9 of diamonds here.
Well, Patrick has 2 pair now. If it comes a 9 or a 10 on the river, he could get in trouble with a full house. Jawanda still with a pair and a straight draw, and Tony G is going to continue slow playing.
Queen of clubs.
Well, Jawanda made trips, but of course, he loses to any diamond. Needless to say, Tony G has better than that.
6,000 to bet from Tony G.
Jawanda gets away from his hand. And, of course, Patrick can't possibly call. Well, he's thinking about it, maybe.
And he folds.
Pretty sick one. That's sick.
Oh.
I got to show that.
Wow.
What are the odds to flop that?
I had trips.
Sick. It's not often you can flop a royal flush.
So Tony G flops the rarest hand in all of poker, but he can't get paid off. Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Coming back.
Who jammed the copier?
Yeah.
AbsolutePoker.com. You in?
What are the odds to flop that?
Well, our stats man tells us the odds against flopping a royal flush are 65,000 to 1, the rarest hand in poker. I'm Barry Tompkins, along with my partner Howard Lederer. 2 players at our table tonight, Patrick Antonius and Phil Ivey. Many people feel the 2 best cash game players in the world.
Well, until the recent tragic passing of Chip Reese in late 2007, I just wouldn't have agreed. He was my #1 player. But now, I think you do have to put these 2 guys at the top of the list. They combine that rare combination of a willingness to gamble with talent that it takes to succeed in the rarefied air of the biggest cash games.
And the action will begin with Phil Ivey.
4 and 8 blind, no straddle this hand.
Ivey at 10-6, he'll throw that away. Kagawa looking at an ace-5.
He's going to toss it. A lot of players in this game would be playing that hand.
Tony G folds as well. Chris Ferguson squeezing out an 8-9 suited.
A nice solid drawing hand for relatively late position. And he opens for 2,400, representing 2 big cards, but he actually has a medium drawing hand and position.
Gus Hansen folded. Now John Jawanda with a 6-7 suited.
Another strong drawing hand, and he calls 2,000 more.
Antonius will fold. So 2 players will see the flop. On the flop, Queen 4-3, no help.
Well, Jawanda has flopped a gut shot, and he does check. We would expect Chris to bet, taking advantage of his position and representing the queen, and he does bet 4,000.
And John Jawanda will call.
I think some players might have actually check raised.
6 of diamonds on the turn.
That gives Jawanda a pair, but Ferguson has 2 overcards and a flush draw. Check, check.
And a 6 of hearts on the river. So trips for Jawanda.
Well, if he knew Chris's hand, he'd be checking here. It looks like he's reaching for some chips. And if he does bet here, I'd expect Chris to lay it down quickly. Juwanda will pick up a small pot.
And Juwanda is going to bet $13,200.
Well, unless Chris is going to try something tragic and fancy, he's just going to lay it down, and he does.
So Juwanda will take the $14,300 in that pot. An easy laydown for Chris, and as we're about to learn, that's not the only thing that comes easily to Chris Ferguson.
Being a professional poker player gives one a lot of free time to develop other hobbies. I've already mastered the art of throwing cards, and since I'm here in Australia, I figured I'd give throwing a boomerang a shot. And to help me out is two-time world champion Robert Krull.
So Chris, welcome to Australia. We'll have you out there throwing and catching boomerangs just like the Aborigines did. When you hold the boomerang, you hold it just like you'd hold a pin. Your wrist is back. This part of the boomerang is parallel with your arm. You snap the wrist forward as you throw the boomerang from behind your head. Before you throw this one, I'm going to teach you with a practice boomerang.
Good idea.
Boomerang goes around.
That's easy.
Well, we'll see. Okay, off you go.
Well.
That's it. Put your hand up. Oh, good try. Okay, looking good. Just like the jaws of a crocodile. Perfect.
What do you know?
Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to have a throw of the wooden ones. So that goes out quite a ways.
Wow, look at that thing. That's amazing.
I want you to catch it just like that. That's pretty good. Just duck,
watch out, watch out.
If I yell duck, that doesn't mean there's one flying overhead. That's it. That's exactly what you want. Now that should hover. Just wait where you are. Now it'll come to you. Good catch. Well done.
All right, let's go hunting. I'm ready to go hunting.
That's pretty impressive. I have tried that, and it is not an easy thing to do.
Well, Barry, I've tried it as well, and you can ask my dogs. They're not happy I did.
Thank you. And like a boomerang, Ellie Alezra has returned.
Me? You went here, I flopped a royal flush. Wow. Flopped a royal flush.
How much action you got?
Zero. Absolutely. I checked all the way. I was last to speak. I checked. I was going to check the river just for fun. I should have checked the river.
First action is going to be with Tony G.
And for some reason, the straddles have stopped. We're actually playing the 4 and 800 blind structure now. Tony G limps in with a king-queen.
Ferguson folds. Hansen will call.
Gus has been awfully quiet so far in this game. Limps in with a 5-3 suited. Dangerous drawing hand if the right flop hits.
And John Juwanda also calls, as does Ellie.
I really like ace suited in deep stack cash games.
Antonius called, so did Ivy. And Kagawa will check. So 7 players to the flop.
Well, anything can happen in a 7-handed flop. Wouldn't want to venture a guess till we see this all-important flop.
And here is the flop, a 5 and a pair of 4s.
Well, pretty much a big miss for a 7-handed flop. We have 2 players who flopped a 5 for 5s up, and we've got Juwanda with a gut shot and an ace draw.
Check around to Hansen.
Well, he's certainly not going to check his pair.
Going to bet 4,400. Juwanda will fold, as does Alezra and Antonius. And now Phil Ivey will fold also. Over to Massa, who's also paired his 5.
Looks like Massa's going to call. Certainly counting it out here.
Could have done that.
And he does call.
Now the action to Tony G.
I thought about it, but I wanted you guys to.
And he folds.
Well, obviously this hand's a very likely split here.
10 of hearts on the turn.
Check.
Well, now Gus Hansen can't make the best hand, though he could certainly make Massa lay it down, as he does count out a bet here. Massa can win, though, if he hits an 8 or a 10 on the river. If it comes a 10, his 8 kicker would outkick Hansen.
The bet was 12,200.
Even though we know he can't lose, this is a tough call, and he does make the call.
And the river is an 8, and Kagawa is going to win this hand. He'll check to Hansen.
Well, is Gus going to fire another bullet? Not likely, and if he does, I think he gets called. No, he checks.
2 pairs.
And Kagawa is going to win a handsome pot, $40,000 in that pot.
Certainly a handsome pot for a hand like 8-5 offsuit.
Really nice win for the amateur, but meanwhile, our defending Aussie Millions main event champion is having a hard time getting on track. We're coming back. Welcome back to the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. We come to you from the beautiful Crown Melbourne. Play continuing, the blinds 400 and 800, the ante of $100, and the action on Chris Ferguson.
Well, Queen 6 offsuit. Chris is going to dump that quickly. Gus Hansen at King Jack. We haven't seen him in too many pots. This is one of his better hands, and he opens it for 2,800.
Action folding around now to Antonius. A pair of sixes.
Well, certainly Patrick, with a big stack, is not going to fold that hand, but probably not going to raise it. He's looking to flop a 6 here and get in cheap.
And he called. Now Masa Kagawa with ace-5 suited.
Well, certainly looks like he's counting out a call with a nice hand for deep stack game here. Ace-high flush draw.
And Tony G and ace-jack will also call. So 4 players will see the flop. Queen 9 deuce.
Check.
Couple of spades on the flop.
Another complete miss on a multi-way flop. 4 players, no pairs except for the pocket pair of Antonius, and we are checked around. Let's look at 4th Street.
On the turn, a 4 of clubs.
Check.
Well, looks like Tony G is going to take a shot at this pot, and he bets 7,000.
Gus Hansen will fold.
Yeah, he had a gut shot, lays it down. Antonius actually with the best hand, and he folds.
And Kagawa will call.
Wow, this is a very strange call, calling with a pure gut shot, and he misses.
That 6 would have given Patrick Antonius a set had he stayed in.
But meanwhile,
check.
Tony G with the best hand, only ace high. Masa already checked, and Tony's deciding whether to bluff here, but this would be bluffing with the best hand. I actually like this bet, though. If he checks, he's kind of giving up.
16,000 was the bet from Tony G.
I can't see how Masa can call. I think Tony G's going to pick this up. He's going to think he bluffed it. But we all know that he was bluffing with the best hand. I like his fighting spirit, though, and yes, well, another balk, and Masa folds.
Service. Service, you call it, huh? And he stopped playing me heads up. That was when the gravy train stopped. He calls it service all the time.
So after the first several hands in this session, Patrick Antonius remains the big stack, a gain of 176,500 Australian dollars, about 160,000 US. 5 players still in the red, including, and perhaps surprisingly, this man right here, Phil Ivey.
Well, I'm not really surprised. Phil just hasn't picked up any hands, and he really hasn't gotten in the game. He's not losing too much, and certainly one good hand would get him back in the black.
Action now folding over to Patrick Antonius. Looking at a Queen Jack offsuit. And he will raise to 5,600.
Well, Phil Ivey with position on Patrick and a better hand. He's reaching for a call here. We'll see, he might raise. Oh, he just calls.
Masa Kagawa now.
Yeah, he's on the button with the suited hand. I would expect him to play. Most of these players have been calling with their suited hands, particularly if they can overcall and play a multi-way pot. He does call.
Now Tony G with a 4-3.
All I can say to our viewers is don't try this at home. I've seen a lot of these types of calls. You see he's reaching for a call here with 4 high. I would not recommend this type of action. We've been seeing it over and over again in this game so far.
Chris Ferguson folds, and now Gus Hansen.
A lot of very weak calls. And here's another call with a less than stellar hand.
So 5 players will go to the flop. Pair of queens at an 8. And Antonius has flopped trip queens.
Well, a huge flop for Antonius. Everyone is basically drawing dead to runners. And he wisely checks. Give everyone a chance to catch up a little bit here. A lot of cards could come up here that give him action. Or someone like Masa Kagawa could take a shot at this, and he is.
$22,000. That gets Gus Hansen out. But I doubt it's going to get this guy out.
Well, I would expect Patrick to just call and continue the slow play. We'll have to see what he does here.
Just a call.
Quietly calling, not wanting to give anything away.
Phil Ivey folds. Now the turn. 7 of spades. Kagawa has caught a little pair.
Yeah, but certainly he's not going to think that that gave him the best hand. I'd expect him to put the brakes on right here and check. It's hard to put Patrick on any hand worse than an 8, certainly.
And a 5 of spades on the river.
Well, Patrick is thinking about whether to check or bet. I'd expect if he bets, Masa's going to just lay it down, and if he checks, I doubt if Masa's going to take a shot at it. He does bet $50,000.
And that calls for a swig of beer.
Well, unless he wants to make a very, very serious bluff. Oh, he does call. Wow. With just a 7, he must have put Patrick on either a 9-10, a Jack-10, or a Jack-9. Those are the only 3 hands that Patrick could possibly call with on the flop and be bluffing on the river. That's a very, very weak call. I'm very surprised.
Well, our amateur with his first real misstep, and the rich continue to get richer. We're coming back. Welcome back to Melbourne, Australia, and the Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Well, the Crown Melbourne is an oasis of luxury and recreation, and those two ideas come together at the Crown Spa. Whether it's a sauna, jacuzzi, or massage, you can let all your worries melt away at the Crown Spa. Well, a few worries at this table, though, as the action begins with John Jawanda, who will fold. And the action folds all the way around to Phil Ivey.
Well, this is the biggest hand Phil's been dealt so far. We know he's probably going to at least limp in. Well, he opens for a raise, $2,500.
And Kagawa, looking at an ace-8, will fold.
He could have been steaming there and played that hand. That's a good laydown by Masa.
Now over to Gus Hansen in the big blind. 10-7 offsuit. And Hansen fingers the chips and then says, no, I don't think so. And so Phil Ivey is going to take down an easy $4,500.
And that's our first pre-flop uncontested anti-steal.
Oh, action Gus.
Very, very disciplined fold on my part.
Oh, action Gus. Fold another big blind.
Very disciplined. I mean, you second or third hand you play, obviously got to give you a lot of respect. Right?
And he rightly did. Elezra is straddling this time, so the first action with Patrick Antonius, an 8-4, he'll throw it away.
I'm going to start playing some hands now.
And true to his word, he's going to play the ace-9 offsuit. He limps in.
Ace-6 for Masa Kagawa. And he will call. So now Gus Hansen with a pair of kings.
Well, Gus usually doesn't slow play before the flop. I would expect him to raise a solid amount. He's out of position here.
And he does $15,200.
Oh, I can't see how Phil Ivey can play the ace-9 offsuit. Masa maybe could get in trouble here with ace. No, he folds it too. Nice little pickup here by Gus.
$6,700 in that one. And Gus Hansen will say thank you very much, and he's not going to do any woofing back at Phil Ivey. Taking the high road. Well, while the dealer shuffles the cards for our next hand, let's take a minute to learn a little something about the language of our Aussie hosts.
It's time for Down Under Dictionary. The word is duck's guts.
The duck's guts?
Duck's guts.
Well, I assume that's the guts of a duck.
That's like
Duck's guts.
that's like if you're
Duck's guts is very, very simply pâté de foie gras.
Duck's guts. Noun. The heart of the matter.
on the heart of the matter.
Does anyone get these right?
Airy fairy.
Airy fairy.
Airy fairy.
A hat.
Is it some sort of bug?
Airy fairy.
Zero clue.
That's the boat that runs up and down the river out here.
Okay.
I got nothing. I don't know.
Airy fairy is a term that means a little insubstantial.
Airy fairy. Adjective. Vague.
Vague. Insubstantial. Vague. That's the same thing, right? Ding, 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 ding.
See you next time on Down Under Dictionary.
Nothing airy-fairy about it. Patrick Antonius is killing this game and planning his next vacation right at the table.
What are you doing?
Rio.
You got a plane going there?
Yeah, we have like the best private plane you can have. Cost like 150,000 to 200,000.
Well, as action continues, Phil Ivey not interested in his 10-7 offsuit, but plenty of interest in Patrick's private plane to Rio.
Direct?
Yeah, if you get a couple people, I'm ready to pay like 50 for it.
He's already won enough money tonight to pay for the whole charter.
Nates.
Well, action continuing. Masa Kagawa could care less about the jet. He raises to 5,500. Tony G folds.
What day are you leaving?
28. 27th or 28th? 28th.
We're going to golf?
Yes.
We're going to play Chinese?
Yes.
I'm very tempted. I think I'm going to go.
It's a nice trip. 10, 11 days in Brazil. This can't be too bad.
No, it can't be too bad. Chris Ferguson, ace queen.
Oh, you mean there's a hand going on?
Yes.
Well, I guess the days that a player with Patrick's talent would have to settle for first-class commercial are over. And there goes Chris raising, making 15,000.
Far too plebeian first class. Jawanda folds.
It's a business trip for me. No, I need to work. That's why I'm going there.
Antonius is going to fold.
I guess he can write it off.
And Kagawa, paying no nevermind to the guys around him, makes the call.
Well, Ferguson in great shape here. He has Masa completely dominated.
So 2 to the flop, 10-8 deuce on the flop, 2 spades.
Ferguson's still in great shape. He's in position with the best hand, and he's probably going to fire a continuation bet here and pick it up.
Kagawa checked to him.
Well, he's never going to do anything quickly, but I suspect there will be some type of wager here.
20,000.
There it goes.
20,000 to wager. And that's going to be enough. Kagawa folds. Ferguson will take down 33,600 Australian dollars in that hand. So Chris Ferguson rakes in the pot. Meantime, Phil Ivey and Patrick Antonius working on their Samba. We're back with the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Once again, I'm Barry Tompkins alongside my partner, Howard Lederer. Let's take a look at the current standings. We've got half our table in the black, and Patrick Antonius still our big winner, while his would-be traveling companion, Phil Ivey, has a lot of catching up to do. Well, the blind's 400 and 800, the ante $100. First action with John Jawanda in this hand. And he'll throw away a queen 9. The Lesra likewise won't play. Nor will Antonius. But Phil Ivey will play, it appears.
Wow, it seems like that 6-deuce offsuit has a hypnotizing effect on some of our players. We've seen that hand played twice. I really have no explanation for that.
Tony G calls. Now Chris Ferguson, who also will call with a king 8. Gus Hansen checks his option. So 4 players to the flop. On the flop, king, queen, 9, and Ferguson is paired as king.
Well, Ferguson decides to let someone else bet his hand. Gus checks also.
Now Phil Ivey, and he's going to make it 3,000 with a 6-deuce.
Well, he's got complete air. He's obviously going to get at least called by Chris.
Tony G laid his hand down. Now Ferguson.
One would expect, well, he just calls. He could have raised there. Probably would have won the pot.
Hansen folds, so to the turn.
Ivy's drawing dead to runners.
9 of diamonds on the turn. And a check from Ferguson.
You see 100% there next to Chris's hand. Unless he folds, he's going to win this hand.
And Ivy's going to make it 8,000.
Can't really see Chris folding here. For 8, he calls.
And it doesn't look like Phil Ivey is thrilled to see that call. And an ace of spades on the river. So Ferguson in great shape.
Yeah, but that's a bit of an ugly card, Barry. You never like seeing that overcard come out there, particularly when you have a king in your hand. A lot of hands that Ivy might have been pushing there might have had an ace in it. Any of those gut shot straight draws, ace jack or ace 10 for sure.
Well, Ivy has made it 25,000 with just a 6 high.
Well, Ivy's fired the third bullet here on this 3 street bluff. Ferguson surely beat unless Ivy is bluffing. Wow, he lays it down.
And Phil Ivey picks up more than $50,000 on a stone-cold bluff.
Great play by Ivy. Well, if you're going to play a 6-deuce offsuit, that's how you do it. He looks pretty satisfied with himself.
Well, we've all become pretty used to seeing that man rake in the chips. In fact, many believe he may be the best of all time.
Phil Ivey works harder than everybody else. He tries harder, and he's as talented as anybody out there.
Phil Ivey's probably the top player in the world today.
I don't know, he's just scary. He plays all the games really well. It's terrifying.
Best player in the world.
A great cash game player, you have to know when to go on for the kill.
Calling.
It's kind of more of a feel thing. You have to know when it's time to stay and play longer, when you should quit. You have to really get to know yourself and get to know your opponents.
His focus is unparalleled. It's his approach to the game. I mean, he's played so many hours, and he just understands how to be full-out aggressive, but at the same time, he knows when to back off.
You just have to go to battle with him and try to eke out your edges as much as you can, because he's going to apply pressure at all times.
Set him up. Do a lot of flat calling, a lot of limping, investing a lot of little chips to try and set him up for a big pot. That's all you can do. If you try and play power poker against him, you're
Am I the best cash game player? It comes down to how you're playing at the time, you know? It's not something that's tangible. It's not something you can just answer and say, I'm the best or he's the best. It's just day in and day out, I get the job done.
Well, I think it might be a bit premature to talk about Phil as the best of all time. His career is a bit young, but the best right now, I think we can start having that conversation.
Let's go to gamble. Let's go to shoot dice.
Okay.
Let's leave these guys.
I make money to gamble. That's my whole life. Some people make money to save it.
Yeah, I know.
And right there in microcosm, you have the story of Phil Ivey. He's a player. Action starts with Alezra. He folds. Antonius with a king-9 suited. And he's going to raise it up to 2,500. Phil Ivey looking at a 7-deuce suited.
Well, that's a fine hand compared to the last hand he played, Barry.
And it appears he's going to play it the same way. He raises to 8,500. And a fold. And another fold.
Well, it looks like Phil's finding another gear here. He'd been awfully quiet for the first little bit after he sat down.
And the action back to Antonius, who makes the call. So 2 players to the flop, 2 very good players. On the flop, 3 tens.
Well, this is actually just the flop that Ivey was looking for. He represented a big hand before the flop. So now it looks like he's going to bet. Yes, he bets 11,000. 3 tens, unlikely to have helped Antonius's hand. Either he had a pair that he's willing to go with, or he has a hand like the one he had. He's just going to have to lay that king high down. Well played by Ivey.
9-10.
Man.
Explain me one thing. How do you always wake up with the hand when I raise?
I get a lot of big hands.
Well, big hands or just a 7 high. It all works the same for Phil Ivey. Welcome back to the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. from Australia's beautiful Crown Melbourne. In just a few weeks, the action shifts from 8 men to nearly 800 when the Aussie Millions main event takes center stage.
The Aussie Millions is one of the biggest poker tournaments in the world.
If they have a really good structure, the blinds and antes go up reasonably slow. There's a lot of really good players that fly into town.
Yeah, this is huge. To miss the Crown Aussie Millions is like insane.
If we had majors in poker, the Aussie Millions have to be one of them.
$1.65 million awaits the winner. The Aussie Millions main event kicks off in 3 weeks. Don't miss it. Meantime, the card's in the air, and the action begins here with Phil Ivey. And Ivey with a king 4 will fold.
Wow, he really wanted to play that hand. He seems to be in a groove here.
Fold from Tony G and Chris Ferguson.
All you gotta do is remind me.
Gus Hansen looking at an ace 3, and he too will throw it away.
I think there's an imposter there in Gus's seat, laying down the ace high and cutoff.
Action folds now to John Jawanda. He's going to raise it up to 3,000. And Lesra, looking at an ace 7, will call.
Well, Eli still trying to get even. He's well into his second buy-in of the night.
And Tony is folded, so 2 players to the flop and an 8-7 deuce on the flop. Couple of hearts. Lesra is paired his 7.
And he's bet 7,000. Feels like he probably has the best hand. And he wants to find out, but Jawanda has flopped an up and down straight draw and 2 overcards. This is about a 50-50 hand. This is a great spot to semi-bluff. John knows that even if he's up against an 8 or a 7, he has a very good chance to win. He can put a lot of pressure on Ellie with a raise.
Giving us a long thought here. And now he's going to push it out there. 42,000.
He raises 35,000. Putting huge pressure on Ellie. Now, Ellie has shown a penchant to gamble tonight. He's stuck. He'd like to get out. This might be the kind of spot where he might just say, you know what, I'm just going to put my chips in the pot. But even if that happens, Jawanda, as you can see, has a 47% chance to win this pot.
And Lesra, I'm sure, right now just going through all the numbers in his head.
Yeah, well, but sometimes it's not the numbers. It's just like, is this the spot where I can double up? No, he's going to lay it down. Nice play by Jawanda. That is a classic example. That's exactly how you play a big draw like he had.
And John Jawanda will win $14,600 on a hand that he didn't even have to make. Bad night continuing for this man, Eli Lesra, and we're coming back.
Is he bluffing? I think he's trying to bluff me here. I bet that ace hit. What is he thinking? What is he trying? When the ace came off on 4th Street, he played with his chips. 13 to 1, 12 to 1, 16 to 4 to 1, 8 to 2. Makes my 2 pair good. Unless I'm drawing dead. I like my chances. I'm all in. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
Welcome back to the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational. Barry Tompkins, along with Howard Lederer, Phil Ivey, going to be straddling here, so the action will begin with Masa Kagawa, and he folds.
PLO? Yeah, Phil Ivey putting that live 1600 out there. He's definitely kicked it into another gear.
Fold around to Gus Hansen now.
And Gus reaching for a raise, and he makes it 5,800 here. If you remember last hand, he threw away ace-3 offsuit. He'd rather play a nice misdirection drawing hand in this cash game situation than a raggy ace, which might get him in trouble. Yep, and he picks up the pot. Well done.
You fold your big lines? Fold it. That's what makes you special.
I think he had something that time.
Well, he did. He had a 4 and a 3.
I don't know why.
I did. I don't know what.
He had a draw.
Banter at the table continues, and these guys, of course, all travel together, know each other, hang out together, and yet try to cut each other's throats.
But only in the best kind of way.
Absolutely. Well, Ferguson and Hansen have folded, and now John Jawanda will do the same. Ellie Lesra as well. Now Patrick Antonius squeezing out a pair of kings.
Big hand for Patrick. He's reaching for a raise.
2,500. Phil Ivey with an 8-5 suited.
Well, Phil's in position, and both Phil and Patrick have a long history of playing some big pots. A legendary TV cash game pot last year of $800,000 these two played.
Kagawa and Tony G both folded, so two players to the flop. And 9-7-3 on the flop.
Great flop for Patrick. He has the overpair. No ace out there to kill his action.
Antonius bets 5,000.
But I suspect Ivey's going to be looking to hit his gut shot here. He calls. If it comes to 6, Ivey could win a big pot.
Comes an ace of clubs.
Well, this is not the card that Patrick was looking for. And he checks. Is Ivey going to take a crack at it? No, he checks as well.
And here's the river. An 8 of clubs.
I'd expect that Patrick's going to try and squeeze a little value out of this one. Maybe make a small bet of about 10,000 or so. Well, he actually bets 13,000.
And gets a stare from Phil Ivey.
Well, Ivey realizes there are a lot of hands that Patrick could have played exactly like this where his 8s are good. This is just a pure reading situation. Does he have it or does he not?
And he is contemplating his options here. Patrick Antonius not giving away anything here.
Take it, just take it. Hope you're proud of yourself.
Well, a good read by Ivey there. He might have paid that hand off, but he must have picked up something and laid it down.
And Patrick Antonius just keeping on, keeping on. He is our big winner so far, up $282,000 Australian, about $250,000 US. At the bottom, Kagawa and Alesra, both triple digits in the red. Next week, the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions Cash Game Invitational continues with Patrick Antonius, the big stack. A young gun joins the game and stirs things up a bit.
Funny if you're folding when we play your cards.
And Phil Ivey's nemesis from last year surfaces again.
You win it on the golf course, don't worry about it.
And that's really distracting and completely inappropriate.
That's next week. Check your local listings for day and time in your region. That's a wrap for us. For my partner Howard Lederer, I'm Barry Tompkins. See you next time from Australia's beautiful Crown Melbourne.